this is the life, isn't it? Gorgeous countryside, fabulous sports car. It conjures up the lifestyle of the debonair, millionaires, life in the fast lane and all that goes with it. But it is a million miles away from the humble beginnings of the man I'm going to meet today. Onwards. Alfie Boe is an international opera singer. He's been described as Britain's favourite tenor and God's anointed vocalist. But he's not strictly an opera singer.
They live and let die. Live and let die.
Alfie has never been one to stick to singing just one type of music.
It's just one world. There's no division. I swear on my life that there is no division between music.
But he caused a bit of a stir in opera circles.
So opera's boring, is it?
That's what you said to Radio 4.
Oh, yeah.
No, well, yeah, it is. Sorry, no.
I think it's fair to say that Alfie has always been kind of the bad boy of the opera world.
There is an aspect of the maverick about Alfie. He'll say what he thinks, and he's northern, of course, which means he'll say what he thinks with knobs on.
To dream the impossible dream.
Alfie's humble beginnings are a far cry from the life of an international singing artist. Back in 1992, he wasn't driving flash motors, he was polishing them, earning £90 a week on a sports car production line.
It's a very romantic story, isn't it? You know, there's something of the Billy Elliot about it. This car mechanic from Fleetwood ending up in La Boheme on Broadway.
Since then, he's gone on to record 7 albums, last year topping the classical music chart and selling 750,000 copies.
Matt Lucas came running up to me and he went, Alfie, Alfie. He said, tonight, a star was born. And I looked around and went, who?
He's had highs, but also lows, especially when his father became terminally ill.
My faith was a huge part of that whole process, and I remembered standing at the altar and I just said, please, God, give him his rest.
I'm on my way to Alfie's manager's home in the Cotswolds. I'm so looking forward to meeting Alfie Boe and finding out how that young Fleetwood boy turned into one of the world's greatest opera singers and how he pulled off one of the greatest musical performances which took his career right up to another level.
Hear my prayer.
2 years ago, Alfie Boe starred as Jean Valjean in the 25th anniversary concert of the musical Les Miserables and found the song that was to make him a household name.
Changed my life, it really has. It really has. That one song, Bring Him Home, is an amazing song, and I just connected with it.
His move into musical theatre from classical opera is evidence of Alfie's versatility as a performer and his refusal to be pigeonholed. There's been some discussion about what kind of singer you are. Are you an opera singer? Are you a rock singer? Are you a musical theatre singer? Where do you put yourself?
I think the simple thing to say is just that I'm a singer. I don't like to give myself a title because I think that limits you to what you can do. You know, if people do like to put you in a box, think you're an opera singer, that's what you do. You sing opera and nothing else. The records I used to listen to all the time was rock and roll, country, blues, folk, jazz, big band sound, classical, reggae, funk. You know, there's all this sort of music that's just out there that's universal. It's just one world. There's no division. I swear on my life that there is no division between music.
He is an amazing opera tenor, but he loves all kinds of music, and what he does is he brings that legitimate vocal, that highly trained vocal, to all these different kinds of music. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's an incredible thing, and I think it's very unusual.
Shooting star leaping through the sky
like a tiger, defying the laws of gravity.
I would find Alfie's got a pair of drumsticks and he's, you know, tapping away on the counter and he's blasting out Queen or Led Zeppelin or Pink Floyd or some dreadful, hideous rock music and warbling at the top of his voice. And it's really interesting because that's not the image you have of Britain's greatest opera singer.
He, I think, originally hadn't thought of going into opera, but then he found, I think, that the opera suited the natural voice that he had, and he went on and explored that.
By default, you got an opera label.
Yeah, but because that was the way that my voice sort of sounded. And I remember someone telling me, if you want to take your voice as far as you possibly can as a singer, you've got to become an opera singer. And it was then I realised that I wanted to take my voice as far as I possibly could and train it as best I could, and so I wanted to be an opera singer. And so that's what I aimed at.
We imagine international opera stars come from Milan or Vienna, but Alfie's family are from Fleetwood, a fishing port in northwest England. His mum and dad, Alfred and Patricia, met at the local dance hall back in 1954. It was love at first sight, and they were married 3 months later. A family soon followed, 8 children, 3 boys and 5 girls, and then along came number 9, Alfie.
My mum wanted a son to be called after my dad. We had Joseph, John, Michael, and she says to Dad, we haven't got a son named after you. And she said, I'd love a son called Alfred. So we prayed for a son. We prayed for another little baby. And my dad was chuffed to pieces when he found my mum was expecting.
You are the sunshine of my life.
Alfie was born in September 1973, the youngest child in a close-knit Catholic family. Alfie, I had no idea what your full name was.
Right.
Can you tell it to me?
Yeah, in a northern way, it's Alfred Giovanni Roncalli Boe, or Alfie for short. There you go.
Well, were they expecting you to be an opera singer?
Well, I was named after, it's quite funny, I was named after a pope, to be honest, so I suppose they had high expectations.
Roncalli was the last name of Pope John XXIII. He died in 1963, but he'd made a big impression on many Roman Catholics who referred to him as Good Pope John. Quite a legacy for a young, playful lad.
We love to boogie. We love to boogie.
When Alfred was growing up, he always acted the goat. He always fooled around. He'd be on the patio dancing with his clogs, or he'd tuning a guitar, which was a tennis racket.
I just enjoyed singing, I enjoyed larking about, I enjoyed being a fool in the back garden and, you know, putting a funny hat on and doing a silly walk and that sort of thing. You know, it was part of me. I think we're all sort of treated quite equally as kids, you know, in the family. You know, people say as the youngest, were you spoiled? Did you have to fight for attention? And no, you know, I didn't really. You know, it was just a real cool existence. It was lovely.
Faith in the family is very important. Sunday mornings were mass. We'd all get up. First up, best dressed. You've got my dress on, you got my socks on. First up, best dressed. Going out to church with all our best gear on. Girls had to wear hats. You know, the lads would be in the blue ties if it was Our Lady's feast day, or red ties if it was the Sacred Heart. And you'd be dancing down the street with our veils and, you know, and all our regalia on. And people say, oh yeah, they're going to church.
Growing up a Catholic, how important was the church to you?
To me, well, it was something I grew up, obviously, going to every Sunday. And Christmas times and Easter times were big sort of events in our household, you know. My mother made a great Christmas dinner, and the celebration of the event was very special to me as a kid. I do remember falling asleep so many times in the sermons, and especially at midnight mass when you'd go on a Christmas Eve. But you know, it's something that I've, you know, that I've grown up with, and it's very close to me.
It was a family life filled not just with faith, but also fun, with Father Alfred at the centre of it all.
Alfred's relationship with Dad was very, very close. Where Alfred was, my dad was. Where my dad was, Alfred was always under his feet. He'd be in the back garden and he'd sit on the top of the swing and wait for Dad coming. And as soon as he saw Dad coming up the road, he'd shimmy down it and he'd be running.
You are my heart's delight, and where you are.
My father really educated me in music. My father loved his classical music. His tastes in music were eclectic. You know, he did love Carl Denver, he loved Slim Whitman, he loved Elvis, he loved Glenn Miller. So his mixture of music was quite eclectic. But one of the artists that he did love was a guy called Richard Tauber.
Girls were made to love and kiss.
The music of Franz Lehar, performed by Richard Tauber, formed the soundtrack that filled their home. They were songs that Alfie would later go on to record himself.
Dad loved his music. Dad loved his old records, Richard Tauber. He'd be singing along with them, you know. Girls were made to love and kiss. And then he'd dance round the table, round the front room, and he'd be waltzing away.
It was Alfie's dad who gave him his first musical instrument.
One day I remember being up in my bedroom, and I used to arrange the cushions, like these cushions, and they have different sounds. This one's lower than this one, you know. And so I'd arrange them in a way where I'd get the highest sounding ones to the lowest sounding ones, you know. So I'd build my own cushion drum kit, if you will, and sit on my bed and just play these cushions like crazy, and I'd be stamping on the floor like this, using the bass drum. And my dad came up and saw what I was doing, and about an hour or two later he came back in and he said, shouted from the bottom of the stairs, he said, "Alf," he said, "you're making too much noise, we're putting up for it for far too long." He said, "Come on down, give us a rest." And I said, "All right." He said, "And there's something of yours in the living room, go and shift it, put it up in your room, it's right in the way." So I opened the living room door, and there in the middle of the room was this beautiful little white drum kit that I'd seen in the shop like a week earlier. And he'd gone out while I was drumming and bought it, and it was great. It was amazing, absolutely amazing.
There was nothing he wouldn't do for you, was there?
No, absolutely. I could lean on him for anything, and when I started playing the drums, I was meeting a lot of other musicians, and we were setting up bands, and we'd go for band practice, and before I could say, "Dad, can you give me a lift too?" he'd have my drum kit in the car, you know, before I'd even finished the sentence, and it was that sort of a guy, you know. He'd never say no.
At that time, his music taste was far removed from opera.
Alfred was in a band. It was a Christmas fair, and he'd be playing with his drums, and he'd be playing around, and these couple of little old ladies clearing away the books, and they thought, "I wish they'd shut up. I wish they'd really shut." I said, "Alf, give us a song." "Oh, he doesn't sing as well, does he?" And I says, "Well, just a bit." You know, he stood up and sang "Girls Were Made to Love and Kiss." She just stood there and, well, he does sing, doesn't he? You know, and he just started then, and one thing, I should have his voice trained, shouldn't I?
After years of just entertaining the family, Alfie was persuaded to try out the Lottie Dawson singing group.
My sister was going to a local amateur operatic society, and my mother knew I could sing, and she said, "Look, why didn't you go along with your sister and see what you think of this amateur operatics? It'll be good for you. You could do a bit of singing, work on your voice and all that." And I thought, well, it's not really for me, you know. It's a bit poncy, all that sort of stuff, and prancing around on stage and all that, and acting and singing it. And I turned up and I got as far as the door, And I looked in, and that was it. I turned around and ran home. I thought, I can't do this now. And then my sister dragged me along this following week, and I got hooked on singing.
Girls were made to love and kiss, and who am I?
He came on, lovely tuxedo and red dicky bow, and he looked... I said, hey, ma'am, I said, he polishes up well. And he started singing Girls Were Made to Love and Kiss. And we looked at each other and was like, wow, he had a talent. We could see he had a talent.
He may have shown great potential as a singer, but his boyish desire to make the audience laugh got him into trouble.
Why were you chucked out?
Because I was fooling about on stage. Then one of the scenes from the shows that we had to do was a sort of dance routine that all the guys had to be a part of, and I couldn't dance, and I'm still not a great dancer. I didn't inherit that from my father, so the only way I could get through the scene was to basically make a fool of myself. I thought, what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk on with a big knotted hanky, you know, on my head, you know, and shorts and braces and all that sort of thing, and an ice cream. Lottie Dawson, she was great. She was loving it every minute, but her assistant wasn't that impressed, and she stopped me from going on, and I never went on, and threw me out and never went back. So that was that. Really. I suppose my bad boy of opera was sort of started back then, I think.
For a lad from Fleetwood, a career in the music industry didn't even seem like a possibility. He got a job in a local Blackpool factory, making the TVR sports car.
My job in the factory started off as a matte blacker, which means that I used to spray the undersides of the wheel arches, and it was probably the lowest job in the factory to do, you know.
He'd come home with his big boots on and his overalls and paint all over the place, and he'd have a dry cough. And Mum said, it's not for him. This is not for him. And she knew that there was a special job for Alfred. She knew that his vocation in life was making people happy. And by his singing or acting daft was his vocation to do God's will.
And I'd packed in singing for a while. I'd done a few local amateur operatics, and then packed it in to concentrate on my apprenticeship in the car factory. And then I just remember one day that I got this sudden urge. I woke up and I just got this sudden urge, like there was a flame that had ignited inside of me to sing again, or to be in a show, to perform. And there was a production of West Side Story going on.
Maria, 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 Maria.
All the boys went into the back room to sing through Maria, which is a very difficult song. A lot of the boys were really only dancers, but thought, well, we'll give it a go. And they all started singing, and I think within a few seconds, everybody had stopped singing apart from Alfie.
Maria, I just met a girl named Maria.
I hadn't realised everyone else had stopped. I just carried on. I was in my own world, and I was singing Maria, 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 and I was going on and got to the end of the song, and I thought, great, I've got that out of the way. And then I looked, and everybody was just looking at me.
Suddenly I found how wonderful a song can be.
Because he was so fabulous, and nobody could believe what they were hearing, that this young boy who was a paint sprayer could sing like that. It was amazing.
I think it was that moment that I realised I had something I could work with, you know, something I could develop. I wasn't perfect as a singer at all. I had a natural ability, but when you have a natural ability, you have to work at it.
'Cause you're working for the man. You're working for the man.
Wherever he was, Alfie was always ready to break into song, even amidst the clang and clatter of a car factory. And one day, fate took a hand.
I'd be polishing away at one point and singing along to the radio. You know, I'd always have my little radio on in the corner, listening to my rock music, and so I always used to meet the customers who were coming to pick up their cars, and then this one guy whose choir I was working on said, "Oh, you've got a good voice. You should do something with it." And I said, "Well, it's easier said than done. How do you go about getting a career in this industry?" And he said, "Well, you know, I'm in the business, and I can tell you that there's an opera company based in Birmingham, but they're auditioning in London, who are looking for members for their new chorus, their chorus for the next tour."
That company was the D'Oyly Carte, famous for their productions of Gilbert and Sullivan light opera, and they were on the lookout for new talent.
An open audition is a bit like the X Factor. You get through hundreds and hundreds of people singing a very short snatch of something to show off what they can do. And it's open audition being the name of it. Anybody can apply. It doesn't have to be somebody's represented by an agent, or it doesn't have to be anybody who's in the profession. Amateur performers are welcome to come along. So you can imagine that the variation of standard in these on these days is quite immense.
I walked in wearing jeans and a check shirt, and I was surrounded by all these opera singers all the ladies wearing ball gowns and...
What? Really?
Yeah.
In the daytime?
In the daytime. They're all done up to the nines, and the guys were suited and booted and pristine-looking fellas, and I had long sort of rocker hair and jeans and trainers. And
Alfie looked as if he'd actually just stepped out of work and come down to sing. And you thought, well, oh, please sing, please be able to sing. And he just started to sing. I think he sang some Leha.
They asked me what I wanted to sing, and I said, well, the only song I know was "You Are My Heart's Delight," which was the Leha song that I grew up listening to from my dad's record collection.
You are my heart's delight, and where you are, I long to be.
He just opened up, and we thought, this is a gift, really, because he is a very good-looking boy who's got this natural tenor voice, absolutely beautiful, and goes right up to the top with ease. And we couldn't believe somebody like that had just landed in our laps.
They phoned me a week later and said, you know, we'd like to offer you a position in our chorus. And I was just floored. I came back in the living room and said to my father, you know, they've offered me a place. They've offered me a job in their chorus for their next UK tour with the D'Oyly Carte. And my father just burst out crying. He loved it. He was like thrilled. My mother was thrilled.
Boss? The boss at the factory?
The boss, yeah, Mike Penny. He was great. He was. I handed him my notice, and he went, "What do you want to go off and be a singer for?" I'll leave out the language that he used, but he said, "What do you want to go off and be? You're an idiot. You're an idiot." He said, "You're on 90 quid a week here." He said, "What do you want to go and be a singer for?" I said, "Well, you know, I've pretty much trebled my salary, you know, so it's like, but it's something I want to do, Mike. I want to be a singer." And he said, "Well, you're stupid. You're stupid. You got a good job here. Good luck anyway." And he walked off, and that was it. So I served my time. I did like a week's notice and left.
Touring with an opera company was a whole new world, but one that Alfie embraced enthusiastically.
Alfie found it very easy to fit into the company. He always had the charm that he has now, and he became a favourite of the company's anyway. But he fitted into the life of a travelling opera chorus very well from day one, I think.
So there you were in the D'Oyly Carte.
Yeah.
And what did it teach you? Was it what you really wanted? Did it feed what you needed at the time?
It was amazing to actually be in the professional world and to discover how the professional industry works.
Yeah.
And it was thrilling, it really was. And the live performances every night on stage in front of an audience was something else. Musically, it taught me a lot because I couldn't read music.
What were you doing?
We were doing HMS Pinafore, and so I spent the whole summer listening over and over again to try and learn my tenor line in the chorus section. It was quite difficult to pick it out because when they're all singing together, it's quite hard to hear your line.
He made the decision after one season with us that he was going to go and have some proper training, because I think in that year that he spent with us, he discovered that this was the life he wanted to pursue.
I was fortunate to have a natural ability to sing, but there was a lot of work I had to do. There was a lot of work. And I thought, well, I really want to train.
Alfie won a scholarship to one of the most prestigious schools of them all, London's Royal College of Music, where they set about training his voice.
You put your voice in their hands. It's like handing your car to a mechanic. You know, you put your voice in their hands, and they work technically on it, on how to achieve certain notes, how to work on phrases, how to get it in tune, you know, all that sort of business, how to breathe correctly.
He has that real opera singer's neurosis about and care of their voice. So, for instance, he told me once that if he's singing one night and singing the next day, he sleeps sitting up so that the voice stays in the right place, which is real dedication, isn't it? You know, so it's weird. So he comes in yawning, and I go, whoa, why are you so tired? He goes, oh, because I had to sleep sitting up.
As a music student, he was learning the discipline needed for the professional world, but the emphasis on classical above all other types of music didn't always sit comfortably with Alfie.
Perhaps their attitude, some of the teachers' attitudes to the students, was not the best for you, didn't bring out the best in you.
No, I think when you go to an establishment like the Royal College of Music, it's full of history, it's full of there's a lot of grandeur about it, and it can have a bit of a high-ended sort of attitude about the art form and the classical world and that sort of thing. And I've always been a firm believer in that music is music. There's two types, good and bad. And it doesn't matter what area of music you come from, it's just one world. And sometimes that upsets a few people.
It wasn't just people's attitudes that Alfie had to struggle with. Offstage, he was under stress too.
It should have been such a wonderful time for you.
Yeah.
To be in one of the best places in the world. And yet, the work you were doing in the college, your life outside, was actually very difficult and very hard.
Yeah, I moved in with some friends from college who were big into the drugs and the late nights and drinking, and there were dealers coming around to the house at 4 o'clock in the morning demanding money and off my friends, and it was just...
This is nothing that you entered into?
No, nothing. I mean, I couldn't do it, partly because it's not me anyway, and I couldn't afford to do that because of the pressure I was under at college to the amount of singing I was doing.
It all became too much, and Alfie moved out. He soon discovered living in London with no money meant he had few options.
I just thought, I've got my rucksack, I'm in London, and I have nowhere to go. I have nowhere to live. And I didn't know what I was going to do. So I just took a walk into Hyde Park and sat on a bench and just didn't move. I remember I just sat down and I just stayed there. I didn't move. The night time came, everybody gradually disappeared and cleared away, and I was just still sat on this bench thinking, what am I doing? I just got so depressed, so really seriously down, and I had a sleeping bag, and I pulled it out and got in that and laid down on the bench and stayed there for the night.
How long were you on the park bench for?
It was about a week or so, and I was going into college, showering in the opera changing rooms, getting breakfast in the canteen, shaving and all that, and leaving stuff in my locker. So I had belongings in college, and then at the end of the night, at the end of the day, spending as much time in the college bar as I possibly could, until I had to leave, until they locked the doors, and I had to go back to the park. Somebody found me, one of my colleagues at college, and he put me in touch with a hostel, a Catholic hostel on Cromwell Road, and I went there.
Did your mum find out you'd been on a bench?
She didn't, and when she did, she was furious. She only found out when they announced me as the park bench tenor in one of the newspapers when I was making my first album.
Did she clump you?
She went crazy with me. She was furious. But
One thing Alfie could always rely on, even in bleak times, was the love and support of his mum and dad. But then came some shattering news. His dad was seriously ill. Dealing with that was to have a profound effect on Alfie and his faith.
At the same time that this horrible period at the Royal College of Music, your father had been diagnosed with a very serious illness. And so you were busy working in London and going up north as often as you possibly could.
Yeah, we found out my father had got this brain tumour, and it seemed to take forever to get the results from the biopsy. We were just desperate to find out. We went storming to see these doctors, and we said, look, we need to know what's wrong with Alf, with my dad. And they came in, took my father and my mother aside with my sister, and I didn't know what was going on or what the results would be, and I just thought, it can't be disastrous. It's my father, it's nothing like that.
Big vital character.
Yeah, nothing like that's going to happen, and he'll be all right. And we were then told by the doctor that we can go into the room, and I walked into the room and found my father and my mother in tears, just hugging each other, and my sister was crying, and my sister then turned to me and turned to us and said, look, this is the results, and it's not good. And I went to my dad and I knelt down, I hugged him, and he he apologized to me, he apologized to me for dying, and we were told he wouldn't really last that long, and as it happened, he lasted for 10 months after that. He was a strong guy.
And your blessings one by one.
He'd spent a lot of time with Dad. His quality time with Dad was very important. Alfred had made him a tape of Richard Tauber and Joseph Locke, and even our Alfred a bit of singing. And he'd put these earphones in and he'd be singing away. Come on, Dad, sing up, and he'd be singing the songs with Richard Tauber.
My faith was a huge part of that whole process, and I remember standing at the altar, and I just said, "Please, God, give him his rest. He's done enough. He's suffered enough. Please give him his rest."
On the day when he did die, in the morning, you and your mum went off for a wonderful walk on the beach and shared an extraordinary mystical experience.
It was a real special moment for both of us, because I think that was a real gelling moment for me and my mother, to realise that we've got each other still, It was almost like we was forced together to go for that little special walk up to the beach, where we both felt like we're in this protected bubble. It's like, I don't know how I can describe it, like walking in a huge hamster ball, on those things. It was like protected, and I remember it raining, but neither of us were getting wet. And I remember distinctly holding my hand out and feeling like I couldn't feel any rain. It was very strange, very strange. And we came home after our walk and felt at peace. But the minute he died, I felt him leave. I felt something go, out of the room and out of him. It wasn't my father anymore. Well, it was my father's image, but I knew he wasn't there.
Mm. Do you believe in that spiritual side of Christianity? Do you feel there is a life after death and there's somebody, something that helps people over?
Absolutely, yeah, I certainly do. Because I think, you know, having experienced certain moments with my father's death, there's got to be something, you know, I hope so. I mean, I'm working my socks off in this life to hopefully get something better in the next, you know.
Alfie graduated from the Royal College of Music and then won a place at the National Opera Studio on a course designed to train students for the professional world.
My year there was incredible. I got to sing to all the conductors, to coaches from all the opera houses around the UK, and got to sing to agents, and I thought, this is what it's all about, and learning opera, learning the scenes, working with everybody else, and I learnt more in that year than I ever did, really.
Alfie began getting minor roles in opera, but then came his big break. Film producer Baz Luhrmann, famous for hits such as Moulin Rouge, was planning a Hollywood-style production of the Puccini opera La Bohème.
The knowledge of the audition came about to me through my agents. You know, they said, look, we've had this interest from Baz Luhrmann over the last few months, and they want to see you.
New York, New York.
Is it something you'd like to do? And I thought, La Bohème, Broadway, Baz Luhrmann, Hollywood movie director. Yeah, I think that sounds pretty cool.
Exactly.
If I can make...
Flying to New York for the first time, going to America, was like my childhood dream. I grew up standing on the beach in Fleetwood, listening to the Beach Boys and all this 1950s rock and roll music, and thinking, I want to go to America. I've got to go to America. It's in my blood somewhere. And so going to New York and holding $1 and sitting in the back of a yellow cab and buying a coffee from a stand in the street and a hot dog, it was great. I loved it. Standing in Times Square at 4 o'clock in the morning, it was just amazing.
He was there to star as Rudolfo in the new staging of La Bohème. The opening night was a star-studded red carpet affair, but the aim of the show was to reach beyond the usual opera audience.
We want to try and get an audience that maybe have never really dreamt or thought of going to the opera before and would like to experience it for the first time.
But success didn't go to his head, as an old acquaintance from his Preston Am-Dram days discovered.
I heard about Alfie being headhunted by Baz Luhrmann. I read about it in the national papers, and we were just passing through New York, so I managed to get a ticket and I went to see him. Just seeing him on the stage on Broadway was just amazing. Chatted to him at the stage door afterwards, and he took us backstage and showed us around, so he hadn't forgotten us.
You got to Broadway, you played La Bohème, you won a Tony Award.
We all won Tonys, yeah, the whole cast. We were fortunate to all get a Tony on our shelves, a Tony honour, and yeah, it sits pride of place in my house. It's nice, and because that time for me on Broadway and working with Baz and the cast was so thrilling, so exciting. Great music, great people to work with, great support and wonderful audiences.
When I fall...
Not only was his professional career on a high, but his personal life started to look up too. Whilst rehearsing in San Francisco, he met a young actress.
And then you meet the love of your life, Sarah.
I met Sarah in my rehearsal period before we'd actually gone to Broadway. Yeah, we met in San Francisco. I was rehearsing with the orchestra in her college where she was studying acting, and I just opened this like kitchenette door, and I had one of these this thermos cup with a huge base to it and a tiny opening on top, you know, and I had tea bags in my hand. And I was trying to put these tea bags through and breaking tea all over the place, and it was all over myself. And I looked up and I saw this girl, and she smiled at me. And the only thing I could say was, you can't get a decent cup of tea around here. And that was my chat-up line. And it seemed to work, you know. We got 2 kids now, so...
And you and Sarah were living hand to mouth, and she stuck by you. She gave up everything for you at that stage, didn't she?
She did. She moved over to New York with me, and we were living in a great building in New York, and for a bedside lamp, we'd have the fridge light, you know.
Really?
Yeah, the refrigerator
Open the fridge
light.
to read and then close it.
That's what my wife did. She opened the fridge door, and an air mattress we were sleeping on. Well, we had to set the alarm at 3:30 to pump it back up again, because it would deflate during the night, so you'd have to pump it back up.
And she stuck with you.
She stuck with me for that. Yeah, she's a darling. She really wasn't. And everything I've done really has always been because of her support and her enthusiasm and her encouragement to me has been incredible.
Well, I'm so tired of crying, but I'm out on the road again.
Life as an opera star meant lots of travelling, performing in opera houses around the world. But Alfie had always wanted to be more than an opera singer. He wanted to share his love of all types of music.
A friend of mine said, look, are you and your wife free? Is there any chance I can bring this opera singer over to meet you? Just come and have a drink with him. And I said, why? Why on earth do I need to meet another singer? Anyway, he brought Alfie over, and Alfie explained that he was an opera singer, that he'd been classically trained, and he really wanted to make it into a different area. And he wanted to make records, and he wanted to play concerts and all of that. And I thought he was a really talented guy, but I was very honest with him and said, look, I know very little about opera. I know this much about classical music. And he said, that's fine, I'll teach you. He said, I'll come round every day and play you operas and teach you about it and explain. And he said, you have to understand, there is only 2 kinds of music. There's only good and bad. There's not classical and pop and rock and country. 2 genres, good and bad. Let's stay away from the bad.
Alfie made a couple of albums, including Onward, which was the direction he wanted his career to go in. But he failed to get the break he so desperately wanted.
It just didn't connect at that point. Everything just didn't come together. That period was incredibly difficult for Alfie, both emotionally. He was wondering whether we would ever get this right and whether we would ever get to the point that he wanted to get to, where he could take music out to the people, where he could become this singer that could embrace all different kinds of and different genres of music.
Then came an invitation to appear at the Royal Albert Hall on Remembrance Sunday. He performed Bring Him Home. It was his introduction to the song that was to change his life.
He sang it because the BBC had asked if he would do that as part of that programme, because it was a very poignant moment. And I watched him singing Bring Him Home, and I remember thinking at that point, this is huge, this is absolutely huge. How am I ever going to get people to hear and understand what this guy can do?
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Alfie Boe.
An opportunity came with a gala concert to celebrate the 25th anniversary of the record-breaking Les Miserables. Alfie was asked to play the hero, Jean Valjean.
At last, the light starts to dawn and a good thing comes along, a really good thing. Les Miserables at the O2.
I remember thinking the minute I was offered it, I thought, bring him home. O2 stage in front of 20,000 people, live to cinemas. I just thought that's going to be the moment, and I thought I had to focus on that, and I had to really make sure that was special. And I was thinking, how am I going to deal with this? What am I going to do? And I was visualising it for months and months and months on me standing on that stage singing Bring Him Home.
When Cameron Mackintosh rang and said, would you ever consider Alfie Boe doing Les Mis, it was the point where I kind of thought, this is it. This is the platform, the catalyst we've been looking for people to understand who Alfie Boe is and to get his character, his personality and that voice, that amazing voice out there.
What to do, what to say, shall you carry our treasure away?
Alfie was playing Jean Valjean and I was playing Thénardier, and we were having this rehearsal about 6 months before, and just in this kind of little hall, and you would not know from this shy, unassuming, humble man quite what an extraordinary sound he can make. I'm really familiar with Les Miserables and I'm a big fan of it, but I hadn't ever heard Jean Valjean sang so operatically before. And I guess it's a tribute to him that I couldn't really imagine it being sung any different now.
Every single day is a pleasure. Every day brings moments to treasure.
Matt Lucas and Alfie became good friends and even struck up a musical partnership.
I said to Alfie, you know, I've got a spare room, why don't you just come and stay in the spare room? And, you know, I've got a couple of dogs and I've got a flatmate and we'll just, you know, we just sit and watch TV. I landed on my feet there because what I didn't realise was he's an amazing cook. And not only is he an amazing cook, but on the rare occasions that I cooked, I got him to sing for his supper. And so we started making videos and putting them on YouTube.
After weeks of rehearsal, the night of the concert finally arrived, and with it, 20,000 expectant fans of Les Miserables.
Have you looked at the screen?
Not yet, no.
Hang on a minute, don't turn.
Okay. Yeah.
Look at all those people.
Oh my goodness. Oh my word.
I know.
30 seconds, guys!
Don't say that.
The performance was also relayed live to cinemas around the country, and back in Lancashire, cheering him on were his mum and sister Annie.
It was absolutely fantastic. It was full, it was packed out. There was quite a bit of banter going from, be quiet please, my brother's singing, you know, who's your brother then?
Who am I? I'm Jean Valjean.
So this Alfie Boe. Yeah, Alfie Boe's like Jean Valjean. We were just awe of the voice.
Is it true that you, while there were all the actions happening in front of stage, you're waiting for your entrance, you got down on your knees and you prayed?
Mm. Yeah.
What did you say?
Well, I say a little prayer. I just said, like, dear Lord, please help me get through this. Let me do this song justice. And then something I always used to ask my dad was, Dad, give us a hand. And I often say that before I go on stage. Dad, give us a hand. And I can guarantee he always does. Finished the song and I couldn't hear anything. Again, it was like not being rained on. It was like I couldn't hear anything at all. It was very strange. I didn't know what I was. I just remember still being in the moment of that last note. Gradually, it was like somebody turned the volume switch up. And I started to realise what was happening. I could hear all this cheering and applause just came flooding at me like a huge wave, and I thought, wow, that went down really well, you know? And then it gradually died down, and then it started again, and it was just another wave of applause and cheering. And people in the stalls, people on the sides, everybody was on the feet. And I was looking around, and I had to break character to show my appreciation, so I just did that and smiled. And Matt Lucas was at the bottom of the stairs, and he came running up to me, and he went, Alfie, he said, tonight a star was born. And I looked around and went, who?
Oh.
Who are you on about? You know, and I said, it's quite arrogant of you, Matt, isn't it? You know?
I knew he'd done it. I knew that his career was about to explode, because that moment was the pivotal moment, the tipping point, whatever you want to call it, where everything changed. And it did. It changed from that moment on. Those 5 minutes of standing ovation was where the world changed for him.
I think there's something that was interesting about Alfie and his connection to the character Valjean is that Valjean is a character who finds his faith along his journey. And I think Alfie's own religious beliefs really inform how he performs that song and how he performs the character, because he understands, in his mind, Alfie's mind, you know, the importance and the need for some kind of religious connection.
So what did happen? Was it the next day everything started, the phone was ringing and...
My manager, Neil, went straight into Universal Records, Decca Records, and presented them with this footage of me at the O2. And before we knew it, we'd been signed to make an album, Bring Him Home.
If I ruled the world, every day would be the first day of spring.
The album became a bestseller, and Alfie was in demand for public appearances and interviews, including one on Desert Island Discs, which caused a bit of a stir in opera circles.
I never go to the opera. I can admit this now, but I never go to the opera.
You can easily say that.
I don't know. I go there and I feel very uncomfy. I just feel like it's not my world. Sitting in the audience and watching it, I'm bored stiff. I really have to say that, I really am.
He did cause a slight amount of uproar in the opera world when he said that he didn't really enjoy going to opera. But what he was actually saying, and he really got misunderstood, was that he said, I get bored going to watch an opera. He wasn't actually saying that he doesn't like opera. He spent hours at my house teaching me about opera, playing amazing arias to me, and explaining to me that Puccini and Bizet and Verdi were the pop songwriters of their day. And what he was saying is, look, if you're an athlete, you don't go and watch athletics, you want to perform. If you're a carpenter, you don't sit and watch other people making cabinets, you want to actually make a cabinet. And he said, as an opera singer, you don't want to sit and watch operas, you want to actually be on that stage and actually be playing that role.
You have sabotaged yourself occasionally through your career.
Yeah. I've not wanted to ruffle feathers. I'm not trying to be a anarchist.
Hang on a minute, I read somewhere you said it entertains me when feathers get ruffled.
Well, it entertains me with their reaction, but I've not tried to. It's just, I have opinions. Everybody's got an opinion. I'm just trying to tell people to have them.
And to accept yours.
Yeah, exactly.
But to confound his critics, Alfie can now boast the title by royal appointment. Earlier this year, he sang for the Queen at the Diamond Jubilee concert, combining his passion for opera with Elvis.
And what would your dad be thinking of you now?
I'd like to think he'd be proud of what I've done. I'd like to think he'd be proud of my children more than what I've achieved in my job. Because that's one thing I do wish, is that he'd seen them. My son is called Alfred Robert, which is my father's name. We took him back to Fleetwood for his christening, and he got baptised in my old church where I got baptised, and taking him into my childhood home. It was quite a moment, because it was the first time since my father had died that there was another Alfred Robert in the house.
Tell me about Christmas. Is it a big deal? Will it be you and obviously Sarah and the children?
Yeah, I think it's just me, Sarah, Gracie, Alfie, and a few friends around, and we'll have the church celebration. The children, they have they'll have like a children's mass where it's quite fun for the kids to be at, and they get taken off and they do little drawings and paintings and activities while the sermons and things are going on. And no, but it's very special to share that time with the children and yeah, have that spiritual moment.
We have all the time in the world.
Now, with his own family and successful career, sleeping on park benches and times when he thought he wouldn't make it are far behind him.
Is this Alfie Boe in a place where he is happiest?
I'm very happy. I'm really happy. I'm very happy the way things have gone. It's been an amazing journey up to now. I don't for 1 minute think that I've finished or that I've reached my peak. I think I get my sort of work ethic, I think, from my father. My dad was a real grafter, and so I won't really be satisfied, even probably on the day I'm retiring, that I've really achieved everything. So, but I know for a fact I've got a lot more work to do and a lot more people to please. So,
Alfie, thank you. Thank you very much indeed.
We have all the time in the world. If that's all we have, you will find we need nothing more.
So there we are, the lovely Alfie Boe. And his journey from Fleetwood boy to opera superstar certainly wasn't a smooth one, was it? But I think through all his trials and tribulations, the thing that's made him such a success and that will carry him through the rest of his life is not only that strong family unit that his parents created and with all his brothers and sisters, but also a clear and living faith in God.
Next week, I meet John Barrowman, who says he's an entertainer with a capital E.